Hi, welcome to Marky Mark's Reloading Parlor. I'm Amber.
And I'm Marky Mark.
And today we're just going to go over a little maintenance and care of your guns as you store them.
So, this happens to be a 1964 Winchester Model 94. It was patterned after the Henry 1866 model. An assault rifle, quite to be sure of in its day. Had a high capacity magazine and you could probably fire 13.3 rounds a second. So, anyway, this is going to get stored, so the last thing you want to do before storing it is always make sure it's unloaded. Check the chamber, stick your finger in it, it is unloaded. So, I'm going to release the hammer, and I've got a silicone rag. You can use some light oil, 3-in-1, or whatever kind of gun oil is your favorite, and wipe down the metal parts. Because the bluing is actually a form of rust, and if it's unprotected, that's exactly what it'll turn back into. So this gun's 50 years old and the bluing is pretty immaculate. The stock has normal wear, no dings or anything. I wipe that as well. Actually, once a year I'll put a coat of linseed oil on the wood. This particular one, 1964 Winchester, switched how they cast the receivers, and you'll note that the bluing's pretty much missing off of there for the most part, and it's common to the era. I've got another one that was in the late 70s, mid 70s, and they produced the receivers in Japan. Evidently their metal's totally different, and it also was not durable, but instead of just going down to the metal in the white, it would actually rust. So even though this has bluing loss, it's not rusted, so that's a good thing. So I've got it well protected. It's got a nice coat of silicone on all the metal, and I've checked the bore, it's clean and shiny. So I live in a pretty damp climate, so what I do is I put, after wiping them down, careful not to touch the metal because I don't want the oils from my fingers to get on the metal. That's not good for it. I will put it in a silicone impregnated sock, which will help protect it.
And an interesting factoid, women have actually oilier hands than men.
Saltier, actually. It's the salts from the oils, but whatever. Yes, women will produce more bodily stuff harmful to blued surfaces.
That's why a lot of my guns are stainless steel, so that it'll help prevent the salts from my hand oils from corroding the guns faster.
So the last thing to do is stick it in a gun case. I had a couple laying around. This one's just a tad bit long, but better too long than too short.
And of course, depending on where you're storing your guns, you know, if you're in a desert climate or a wet, humid climate, you're going to have to adjust to that. What would you do differently?
Well, again, you know, I pointed out that our climate is wet. We live in, it's not so much the humidity here, but the dew point, condensation, that we have to worry about. I've got some humidifiers throughout the house because it's not only a problem for blued surfaces of firearms, but other things, mold. We've had to use mold-resistant paint.
And we also use damp red.
Yeah, that's the dehumidifier, the damp red. Good stuff. And right now, it seems to be, I used to do it like once a month, check those. Now I got to do it at least every other week. So right now is, I guess, our damp season.
Yeah.
But, you know, again, depending on the climate you live in, the way I do mine, about once every 6 months I'll pop them out and check them. They may or may not need a fresh coat of silicone on them. Some do, some don't. It could depend on the quality of the finish. I've got them stored in different areas.
So if you got your gun and say the silicone's worn off and you, oh no, it's been a year or two and you forgot to check your guns, which you should check regularly, and there are some damage, what do you do to handle that?
Well, it depends on how severe it is. Sometimes if you get a little bit of surface rust, it may simply wipe off. But if it's gotten into the metal even the slightest bit, it can damage the metal surface. So some of the things I do is I have some very fine brass wool, like steel wool, except it's brass, which is softer than the steel, because the steel they use
that so that it wouldn't scratch and mar.
Exactly. The steel they use in rifles is a soft steel because it needs to expand and contract from the heat of what's going on. So if you use a regular steel wool, it's going to be harder. You're going to scratch your metal. So the brass, or it might be bronze, one or the other, is much easier on your metal surfaces. Another little trick I did before that was you could take a match, the head of it, and grind it up, and that seemed to work as well. It actually took me a long time to run across the brass steel wool and learn that. I've only seen it a couple of places. I think I got mine from Midway. They seem to have just about everything you ever wanted. And again, if it is beyond that, where it's pitted the metal, depending on, you know, how you want your gun to look or its value or anything like that, it may need to be stripped, re-blued, have the metal repaired, etc., etc. So, you know, normally that's going to take some years of abuse to get to that point.
So
or just
an ounce of prevention and a little care will go a long way for your care of your weapons.
Exactly. And again, that's going to depend on your environment, how you store them, how well you prepare them for storage, etc., etc. So this is what I do to store mine, and I'll check them about once every 6 months. We're usually good to go, but at that 6-month interval, I'll give it a fresh coat of silicone on the surfaces. So that's about it. There's your maintenance for storage. Until we meet again, Marky Mark extraordinaire.
Don't forget to subscribe, like, leave a comment. We'd love to hear from you.